Hello everyone, my name is Max Tkachuk, and I will be presenting about the issue of quiet quitting and explaining why it's such an important problem to resolve. It is first important for us to understand what quiet quitting really means before we can find potential solutions for it. This is something that many employees do on a daily basis without even realizing it. While quietly quitting, employees still perform the various tasks that their employer requires them to do so. However, they don't really go above and beyond, and that's where the big problem comes in. This leads to employees putting in minimal effort and represents a lack of engagement. So when quietly quitting, employees are not caring about their employer to the greatest extent, and that shows that a disconnect is ultimately present. This brings us towards our next topic of conversation pretty well. It is important for society to recognize and understand why quiet quitting is even a problem, and how big of a problem it really is. The fact that over 50% of employees within the United States practice quiet quitting is a disturbing trend, and it's been really getting worse in recent years. In fact, in 2022, just 32% of the workforce was actively engaged, just 32%, whereas an alarming 18% were actively disengaged. These numbers are especially prevalent among young employees. I can connect to those numbers myself because as a lifeguard, swimming instructor, and physical therapist aide, I work with a lot of young employees and often see them practice this quiet quitting. I can see the disconnect between employee and employer. And another contributing factor to this issue is this idea spreading throughout social media, which further worsens the problem and makes it acceptable by society. Unfortunately, employees at the time may not realize that quiet quitting is not only hurting the employer, which they're obviously fine with, but it can also hurt themselves over the long term. Employees may think that there's no cost to themselves. However, by quietly quitting and not going above and beyond, they are limiting their opportunities for growth and development and depriving themselves from important real-life experiences that they would potentially develop. Thus, instead of actively developing, people are just going through the motions. And this behavior is also a huge loss of time and financial resources for the employer, as productivity will fall over the long term. This increases marginal labor costs for the firms. In addition, a deeper problem is revealed about employees who practice quiet quitting. Ultimately, this practice shows that they cannot find meaning within their work. This can lead to negative portrayals about self-worth and can ultimately impact their mental health and spill over into their personal lives, which is just another extremely undesirable impact of quiet quitting, and this shows how important of a problem this really is to fix. Now, prior to identifying potential solutions to this problem, it is crucial to understand why such a problem exists, and to explain the employee's perspective. So over the recent years, employees among various industries have felt as if an additional increase in effort on their part doesn't really translate to increased investment from their employers. And this leads to the understandable question of what's in it for me from employees' perspective and promotes quiet quitting. Putting in the extra effort is not worth it for many individuals. And moreover, due to various economic shortfalls lately, people don't want to officially quit, and they approach this with great hesitancy. So this sets up for what is for them an extremely convenient alternative, and that is to quit quietly. When doing so, they do not bear any direct additional costs, and this makes this such an undesirable option. Ultimately, we have seen a huge increase in this worrying trend since the start of COVID-19 for various reasons. An obvious factor would be how it changed the job market. Once again, people are much more likely to latch on to the jobs that they currently have without really seeking out opportunities for growth and development. And as we have all experienced, COVID has also fundamentally changed the way we think about and perceive everything around us. There has ultimately been a huge increase in the I don't care mentality, especially among youth and young employees. And although we may not realize it, we are still experiencing the impacts of COVID-19 today and will continue to do so throughout our lives. So what then can employers do to help limit the problem of quiet quitting? They can help the situation in a lot of different ways. At the core, employers should do a better job of clearly defining the core job tasks. This would provide employees with a clear understanding of what should be considered extra. Employers need to dedicate their attention and resources first towards getting employees to perform their core tasks at the highest possible level. This would provide employees with a clear understanding that helps build trust. In addition, and this is a crucial one, employers have to actively listen to and invest in their employees. This requires a specific approach for each employee, as employers should gather data about the needs and wants of each employee separately, because they're going to be different for each person. Ultimately, this would increase the chances that employees will want to go the extra mile and, in a sense, give back to their employers. This goes back to the idea that everyone wants to feel supported and put in the best situation to succeed. In addition, establishing a positive culture that encourages feedback would help reduce quiet quitting. Instead of being afraid of supervisors, which is most common among young employees, they should be encouraged to speak up and provide suggestions to their higher-ups. This would create a more collaborative environment that builds on trust and respect. Another way in which employers could cut down on quiet quitting is by limiting the hustle culture and trying to complete too many tasks at once. Inevitably, this hustle culture eventually leads to employee burnout, them not feeling appreciated, and this will lead to employees putting in the minimal effort and actively disengaging from what they do. Addition by subtraction could therefore be beneficial to all parties involved. Another method that employees could use is establishing an effective reward system for employees that do go above and beyond. This would provide employees with incentives to go the extra mile and connect their personal motivations to the goals of the employer. It allows employees to lead by example. So as you can see, employers can help reduce quiet quitting in many different ways. It is important to also recognize that quiet quitting is not just an employer problem, as employees themselves can also play a crucial role to help stop this trend. Both parties can contribute to this. Ultimately, the biggest thing that an employee can do is to take the time and consider what their true passions are. This would help align the interests of the employee and connect their professional life to their personal life. In addition, employees should also prioritize above and beyond behaviors that connect with their own interests and values. This will ultimately increase their enthusiasm, effectiveness, and job satisfaction. Finding your worth and doing what you love is extremely powerful at the end of the day. And this would also provide a clear benefit to the employer as well. Here are the sources that I used to gather my information and organize my presentation. I hope that we can all get something useful out of this topic and find ways to stop this damaging trend within the workplace. Thank you.